Welcome back my channel. Do you remember that Indonesia had the ransomware's attack last year? Over 200 government agencies were affected. I remember clearly that our government didn't apologize to us even though our personal data were stolen. No one took the responsibilities, and people forgot the incidents as usual. Today's podcast is about cybersecurity in Indonesia. Stay tuned.
Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. Today we're taking a closer look at Indonesia's digital future. It's a bit of a mixed bag, honestly. On the surface, things seem pretty promising. By 2025, their digital transactions are expected to reach a massive $130 billion. But there's this growing shadow lurking behind all this progress.
Yeah, it seems like Indonesia's cybersecurity readiness hasn't quite kept pace with their rapid digital adoption. It's like they've built this high-tech digital skyscraper without really solidifying the foundation.
Exactly. It's a classic case of moving fast and breaking things. But unfortunately, in this situation, the things that are breaking are their cybersecurity defenses.
Right, and that makes them a prime target for cybercriminals. They're like easy prey in a way.
So let's get into some specifics here. What kind of attacks are we talking about? Can you give us a sense of how serious this problem really is?
Absolutely. Let's rewind to June 2024. Remember the Brain Cipher ransomware attack?
Vaguely refresh my memory.
Well, it hit the Temporary National Data Center, the PDN. And it wasn't just a minor inconvenience. It brought over 210 government agencies to a screeching halt.
Wow, over 210. That's huge.
Yeah, immigration checks at major airports were frozen. Scholarship applications were left in limbo. It was complete chaos.
That's a pretty stark illustration of how disruptive these attacks can be.
Yeah.
It's not just about data theft. It's about paralyzing essential services.
Exactly. And what's particularly alarming is that Brain Cipher is a variant of the Lockbit 3.0 ransomware. It's designed to encrypt critical systems and effectively hold them hostage until a hefty ransom is paid.
So in this case, they were demanding, what, $8 million?
Yes, right. $8 million. To their credit, though, the Indonesian government refused to give in.
Good for them.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine the logistical nightmare of recovering from an attack of that magnitude.
Oh, absolutely. They had to scramble to migrate data to private cloud services just to get things back up and running.
Yeah.
It exposed a major vulnerability in what was supposed to be a secure government system.
So this Brain Cipher attack was a major wake-up call for Indonesia. But it wasn't an isolated incident, was it?
Unfortunately not. Indonesia has become a hotbed for cyber attacks. In 2022, their central bank was hit with ransomware. And in 2021, the health ministry's COVID-19 app was hacked.
Exposing personal data from millions of people.
1.3 million, to be exact. And it's not just government institutions. Private companies are also being targeted.
Which is really worrying considering how much we rely on digital platforms these days for just about everything.
It is. In 2023, Bank Syariah Indonesia, the country's largest Islamic bank, lost a staggering 1.5 terabytes of data to the Lockbit ransomware group. And in September 2024, cryptocurrency platform Indodax was hacked, resulting in a $22 million loss.
So it seems like ransomware and data breaches are becoming increasingly common in Indonesia. What is it that makes them so vulnerable to these attacks?
Well, part of it is the rapid pace of digitalization. They've embraced technology enthusiastically, but haven't paid enough attention to cybersecurity along the way. It's like they've built this amazing digital mansion with all the bells and whistles, but forgot to install an alarm system.
Yeah, like I said before, moving fast and breaking things.
Mm-hmm.
Their cybersecurity defenses are the things that are breaking.
Exactly. And then there's the human element. Phishing attacks in the country have surged by 70% according to the BSSN, Indonesia's national cyber and crypto agency. Cybercriminals are getting incredibly good at crafting convincing emails and messages that trick people into handing over sensitive information.
That's what really worries me. Technology can only take you so far. Even with the most advanced firewalls and antivirus software, one wrong click on a malicious link can bring everything crashing down.
It's like leaving the back door to your digital fortress wide open. And what makes it worse is that a 2023 survey by the Indonesian Internet Service Providers Association, the APJII, found that a staggering 74.59% of Indonesians were either unaware of or felt they hadn't been affected by cyber attacks.
That's a huge number. So Indonesia is facing a bit of a cybersecurity crisis here. But I'm sure they're not just sitting back and letting it happen. What steps are they taking to protect themselves and try to secure their digital future?
They're definitely not standing still. They're trying to ramp up their cybersecurity efforts. The question is, are they doing enough, and are they focusing on the right things?
Okay, well, let's get into that. Then tell me, what measures are they putting in place?
Well, one key step was the Personal Data Protection Law, the PDP law. It came into full effect in October 2024. It aims to provide better protection for citizens' personal data and regulate how it's handled in the digital realm.
So it's like they're putting up guardrails around how personal data can be collected, stored, and used. That sounds like a solid first step.
It is. But it's not just about protecting data within Indonesia's borders. They're also trying to assert their digital sovereignty control over their digital destiny, you could say.
That's a big one. How are they approaching that?
One strategy is data localization. While Indonesia has eased up on some broader data localization rules, they've kept tight regulations in specific sectors like finance and government. Sensitive data in these sectors must be stored and processed within Indonesia.
So it's partly about protecting the data itself, but also about maintaining control over it. It's a delicate balancing act, trying to safeguard sensitive information while not hindering economic growth.
Exactly. And in addition to data localization, they're also investing in more hands-on technical defenses. They've set up cyber incident response teams, or CERTs, at various levels, national, sectoral, and organizational, to enhance their ability to handle and respond to cyber incidents.
So these CERTs are like specialized firefighters, ready to contain cyber attacks before they can spread and cause more damage.
That's a good analogy. But are these measures enough to stay ahead of the curve? The cyber threat landscape is constantly evolving. What's Indonesia doing to keep pace with those emerging threats? That's where the global context comes in. What's happening on the international cybersecurity stage has a direct impact on Indonesia's vulnerabilities. You know, one thing that really worries me is the rise of AI-powered attacks.
AI taking over the world. Should I be worried? I've seen too many Terminator movies. But seriously, how is AI actually being used in these attacks?
Well, think of AI as a tool that can be used for both good and bad. In the wrong hands, it can do some pretty scary stuff, like crafting incredibly convincing phishing emails or creating deepfakes for fraud.
Deepfakes, that sounds like something straight out of a spy movie.
It's not just in the movies anymore. And AI can even be used to develop malware that adapts and evolves on its own, which makes it incredibly difficult to detect and stop.
So it's like giving these cybercriminals a supercharged arsenal. But if AI can be used for attacks, can it also be used to strengthen defenses?
Oh, absolutely. That's the silver lining here. AI can be a powerful ally for cybersecurity professionals. It can help analyze huge amounts of data to spot patterns and anomalies that might indicate an attack. And it can automate threat detection and response, even help predict future threats.
So it's a bit of a tug-of-war. Then AI can be used to make attacks more sophisticated, but it can also enhance our defenses. It sounds like Indonesia needs to be prepared to deal with both sides of that coin.
Precisely. It's a race against time to harness the power of AI for good before it's fully exploited by the bad guys. And Indonesia, like every other nation, is caught right in the middle.
Okay, so AI-powered attacks are definitely something to keep an eye on. What other global cybersecurity trends are keeping you up at night?
Ransomware is still a major concern, and it's evolving in a really nasty way. It's not just about locking up data anymore. Attackers are now stealing data before they encrypt it and then threatening to release that sensitive information unless they get paid a ransom.
So it's like a double whammy. They hold your data hostage and then blackmail you with the threat of exposure.
Yeah.
That's pretty brutal.
It is. And the targets are getting bigger and bolder. We're seeing attacks on hospitals, schools, even critical infrastructure. The stakes are getting higher all the time.
And I imagine Indonesia, with its booming digital economy, is a prime target for these kinds of attacks.
You're absolutely right. Their rapid growth makes them very attractive to cybercriminals who are always looking for a big payday. And as we've already discussed, their cybersecurity infrastructure is still playing catch-up.
So it's a race against time to strengthen their defenses before they become the next victim. But it's not just cybercriminals they need to worry about, is it? You mentioned state-sponsored cyber warfare earlier. What exactly does that involve?
State-sponsored cyber warfare is basically nation-states using cyber attacks to achieve their geopolitical goals.
So we're talking about cyber attacks launched by governments for political purposes.
Exactly. It could involve disrupting critical infrastructure like power grids or transportation systems, stealing sensitive government data, spreading disinformation, or even interfering with elections. It's a whole new battleground, and the rules of engagement are still being figured out.
And you're saying that Indonesia is a potential target for these kinds of attacks.
Any country with a significant digital presence is a potential target. And Indonesia, with its strategic location in Southeast Asia and its growing economic influence, is definitely on the radar.
So it's not just about protecting themselves from lone wolf hackers, but also from potentially hostile nations. Talk about high stakes.
Yeah.
Are there any other global trends we should be aware of?
A few more, each with its own set of challenges. The explosion of Internet of Things devices, the IoT, has created a massive new attack surface. Everything from smart refrigerators to industrial control systems is connected to the Internet. And many of these devices have weak security protocols, making them easy targets for hackers.
So it's like having a million unlocked doors in your digital house. Not a very comforting thought.
Definitely not. And then there's the rollout of 5G networks. 5G promises faster speeds and greater connectivity, but it also introduces new security vulnerabilities. Cybercriminals are already exploring ways to exploit 5G, so we're likely to see a surge in attacks targeting these networks.
So while we're all excited about the possibilities of 5G, we also need to be aware of the potential risks.
Exactly. And then there's the looming threat of quantum computing. While it's still some way off, it has the potential to break the encryption methods we rely on today. Governments and businesses need to start preparing for a post-quantum world now.
Wow, that sounds like a ticking time bomb for cybersecurity. Anything else to add to our list of worries?
One more, and it's a big one: supply chain attacks. These attacks target third-party vendors or suppliers to gain access to a larger organization. It's like sneaking in through the back door instead of trying to break down the front gate.
So it's all about finding the weakest link in the chain, even if it's not the intended target.
Exactly. These attacks are really difficult to detect and prevent because they exploit those trust relationships that exist between organizations.
We've covered a lot of ground here. AI-powered attacks, ransomware, state-sponsored cyber warfare, IoT vulnerabilities, 5G risks, quantum computing threats, supply chain attacks. It's enough to make you want to unplug from the internet altogether.
I know it can feel overwhelming, but remember, awareness is the first step towards effective cybersecurity. By understanding the threats, we can start to develop strategies to mitigate them.
Knowledge is power. Right. But speaking of strategies, what is Indonesia doing to address these challenges? We talked about data localization and those cyber incident response teams. But are those measures enough to keep pace with this constantly evolving threat landscape? Are they putting up a good fight?
Well, that's a complex question, and there's no easy answer. They're making efforts, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Let's take a closer look at some of their initiatives and see how they stack up against these challenges.
Okay, let's dive back into the specifics. You mentioned data localization laws earlier. Those seem to be a bit controversial.
Yeah, they are. On the one hand, requiring certain types of data to be stored within Indonesia can help protect that data from foreign governments or cybercriminals. It gives Indonesia more control over digital assets and potentially strengthens national security.
It's about safeguarding their digital sovereignty, right?
Right.
Like we discussed before.
Exactly. But on the other hand, those laws can create barriers to innovation and economic growth. They can make it harder for Indonesian businesses to collaborate with international partners and access the latest technologies. And they can increase compliance costs, which can be a burden for smaller businesses.
So it's a trade-off between security and economic competitiveness.
Basically, yes. Finding the right balance is tough. While Indonesia has relaxed some of its broader data localization requirements, certain sectors like finance and government still have strict rules about storing and processing data domestically.
So we're trying to find that sweet spot, protecting sensitive data while also encouraging economic growth. But data localization is just one piece of the puzzle. What about their overall strategy for dealing with these cyber threats?
That's where their national cybersecurity strategy comes in. It's outlined in Presidential Decree number 472023, and it's essentially a blueprint for guiding their cybersecurity efforts.
A master plan for building their cyber defenses.
You could say that it covers a lot of different areas, from critical infrastructure protection and cybercrime prevention to data protection, incident response, and international cooperation.
Okay, so it sounds pretty comprehensive, but is it actually working? Are they making any progress?
It's still early days, but there are some positive signs. The National Cyber and Crypto Agency, the BSSN, which is responsible for implementing the strategy, has been busy strengthening Indonesia's cybersecurity posture. They've been conducting vulnerability assessments, developing incident response plans, and working to raise awareness among government agencies and the public.
So they're taking concrete steps to put the strategy into action. That's good to hear. But what about the human element? We talked about the shortage of cybersecurity professionals and the general lack of awareness among the public. Are they making any progress in those areas?
They're trying, but they've got a long way to go. To address the talent gap, they're investing in training and certifying more cybersecurity professionals. They're partnering with universities and private companies to create specialized curricula and offer training programs for government employees.
So they're trying to cultivate their own talent pool.
Exactly. And they're also recognizing the importance of public awareness. They've launched initiatives to educate citizens about online safety, how to spot phishing scams, and how to protect their personal data.
So they're trying to empower individuals to be part of the solution. Because ultimately, cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility, right?
Absolutely. We all have a role to play in creating a safer digital environment.
Okay, so we've got legal frameworks, the national strategy, capacity building, and public awareness. What about international collaboration? You mentioned earlier that Indonesia is working with ASEAN and other partners. How important are those partnerships to their cybersecurity efforts?
International collaboration is absolutely essential in today's world. Cyber threats don't respect borders, so countries need to work together to share information, coordinate responses, and develop common standards.
It's like a global neighborhood watch for cyber threats.
That's a great way to put it. And Indonesia has been actively involved in several regional and international initiatives. They're participating in the ASEAN Cybersecurity Cooperation Strategy, which aims to boost cyber resilience across Southeast Asia. They're also collaborating with Interpol to combat cybercrime and working with other countries to develop international norms for responsible state behavior in cyberspace.
So they're building alliances and sharing expertise with partners around the world. It sounds like they're taking a multifaceted approach, which is encouraging.
They are. But it's important to remember that cybersecurity is a constantly evolving challenge. The threats are constantly changing, and the attackers are always innovating. Indonesia needs to be agile and adaptable to stay ahead of the curve.
Right. It's like a game of chess where the rules are constantly changing and your opponent is always thinking several moves ahead. So where should Indonesia focus their efforts going forward? What are the key priorities for them?
Well, they need to continue strengthening their critical infrastructure protection. That means power grids, transportation systems, financial institutions, government networks, all the essential systems that are becoming increasingly vulnerable to cyber attacks.
So protecting the digital foundation of their economy.
Exactly. They need to do this by investing in the latest security technologies, developing robust incident response plans, and conducting regular vulnerability assessments to identify and address weaknesses.
Okay, so critical infrastructure protection is a top priority. What else should be on their radar?
Another key area is developing their cybersecurity workforce. As we discussed, there's a global shortage of cybersecurity professionals, and Indonesia needs to step up its efforts to attract young people to the field, provide them with the necessary training and education, and create career paths that will keep them engaged.
So investing in the next generation of cyber defenders.
Exactly. And they need to do this in a way that recognizes the diversity of skills and perspectives that are needed in cybersecurity. It's a team effort, and you need a diverse team to be successful.
Makes sense. You need people with different backgrounds and areas of expertise to address these multifaceted challenges.
Absolutely. And lastly, they need to keep raising public awareness about cybersecurity. This is so important because even with the most sophisticated technical defenses, those defenses can be bypassed if users are tricked into clicking on a malicious link or giving up their passwords.
So educating the public and empowering them to be more cyber aware.
Exactly. And this needs to be an ongoing effort, not a one-time campaign. Cybersecurity threats are always evolving, so people need to be constantly learning and adapting.
All right, so we've identified 3 key priorities: strengthening critical infrastructure protection, developing the cybersecurity workforce, and raising public awareness. But are these efforts enough? Will Indonesia be able to secure its digital future?
That's the big question, and it's one we'll explore in the final segment of our deep dive. Let's shift our focus from the present to the future and see what insights we can gain about Indonesia's journey towards a secure digital future.
Okay, so we're back for the final part of our deep dive into Indonesia's cybersecurity situation. We've talked about the threats they're facing, the challenges they need to overcome, and the strategies they're using to defend themselves. But now I want to look ahead. What does the future hold for Indonesia's digital security?
Well, predicting the future is always a bit risky. Especially in the world of cybersecurity, things change so quickly. But based on everything we've discussed so far, I think Indonesia is at a very critical turning point.
A turning point. Okay, now you've got me intrigued. Which way do you think they'll turn?
Well, they have a choice to make. They can keep reacting to threats as they pop up, always playing catch-up. Or they can take a more proactive approach, anticipating future challenges and building a truly resilient cybersecurity ecosystem.
So basically, they can choose to be reactive or proactive. They can play defense or go on the offense.
Exactly. And the decisions they make in the next few years will really determine their digital destiny. If they make the right investments, cultivate the right talent, and build strong partnerships. Indonesia has the potential to become a real leader in cybersecurity in Southeast Asia.
So you're saying they could turn this challenge into an opportunity. That would be pretty impressive.
It definitely would be, but they have a lot of potential. Indonesia has a large and growing digital economy, a young and tech-savvy population, and a government that's committed to digital transformation. They can leverage all of these assets to build a really strong cybersecurity sector.
So they could actually become a role model for other countries in the region.
It's definitely possible, but it won't be easy. They'll need to overcome some significant obstacles along the way.
What are the biggest hurdles they're facing?
Well, one of the biggest hurdles is just the sheer scale and complexity of the threat landscape. We've talked about how the threats are constantly evolving and the attackers are always finding new ways to exploit vulnerabilities. It's a constant arms race, and Indonesia has to make sure it's keeping pace.
So basically, they have to stay ahead of the curve, constantly adapting and innovating to keep up with these ever-changing threats.
Exactly. Another major hurdle is the lack of awareness and expertise. Both within the government and among the general public, cybersecurity is a relatively new field in Indonesia. There's a real knowledge gap that needs to be addressed.
So they need to bridge that gap and really foster a culture of cybersecurity awareness from the bottom up.
I couldn't agree more. Cybersecurity can't just be the responsibility of a small group of experts. It needs to be a national priority, something that everyone understands and takes seriously.
Okay, so awareness and expertise are crucial.
Yeah.
What other areas should they focus on?
Well, strengthening their critical infrastructure protection is absolutely essential. We're talking about power grids, transportation systems, financial institutions, government networks, all those systems that are so vulnerable to attacks. They need to make those systems as secure as possible.
So protecting the digital foundation of their economy. Makes sense.
Exactly. And they need to do this by investing in the latest security technologies, developing really comprehensive incident response plans, and conducting regular vulnerability assessments to find and fix weaknesses.
So making sure the foundation is strong and secure.
Right. And it's important that they approach this in a collaborative way. Cybersecurity isn't just the government's responsibility. It requires a joint effort. Businesses, civil society, individuals, everyone needs to be involved.
So it's about creating this strong, resilient cybersecurity ecosystem, a collective defense against these threats.
Exactly. And they need to figure out how to do all of this while still promoting innovation and economic growth. They can't just build a digital fortress that stifles creativity and entrepreneurship.
Right. It's about finding that balance between security and progress. Not an easy task.
It isn't.
Yeah.
But I think Indonesia can strike that balance. They have the potential, the resources, and the commitment to become a true cybersecurity leader in the region.
Well, that's definitely an encouraging thought. It seems like Indonesia is facing some big challenges, but they also have a real opportunity to turn things around.
Absolutely. Their journey is far from over, but I'm optimistic about their future. If they keep making smart decisions, invest wisely, and collaborate effectively, they can secure their digital future and hopefully pave the way for a safer, more prosperous digital world for everyone.
This has been a fascinating look at Indonesia's cybersecurity journey. Thanks so much for sharing your insights with us.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us for another deep dive. We'll be back soon with another exploration of the forces shaping our world. Until then, stay curious and stay safe online.